So Newsweek has an article about Civil War 2.0, why splitting up would be a $100 trillion mistake. Now let's talk about Civil War and splitting up. Um, America has an incredible economy, and splitting it up into like tiny little countries, or like into like making the states their own countries, it would kill a lot of the synergies that America has going for it. So you wouldn't want to exactly do that. And I wouldn't propose, quote unquote, splitting up into different countries. What I would propose is scaling down the federal government, and so all the laws and taxes and all that stuff, they don't apply to America across the board, because obviously Texas and Maine and California and Oregon, they're all separate places with their own separate cultures and their own goals and political ideologies. So why spend so much energy fighting over the federal government? I mean, would be much nicer if people could control their own local state governments. Of course, I don't think this is practical as far as politically feasible. That's what I would do. I think that's the best solution. But over the years, the federal government has been getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and states have been themselves are more and more marginalized. So I don't know how it's possible to shrink the federal government and give states more control. Do you have to be? Is there going to be like a shooting war for that to happen? But yeah, I mean, making like 50 currencies and 50 different countries and 50 different little militia militaries and stuff like that. Yeah, no, one big United States, and people moving freely throughout the states and goods moving freely throughout the states and no tariffs and stuff like that. That is very synergistic, and it's very helpful, and that's part of why America is so rich. So we don't want to destroy that. Yet we want to diffuse the culture war. If California want to be socialist and have to a certain extent, it's already happening. California basically ignored the marijuana laws. A lot of this, maybe some of this, Republican states are ignoring the gun laws, the federal gun laws, or things like that. So both states are kind of coloring outside the lines here. But yeah, if California wants to give UBI and be socialist and have insanely high taxes and this and that, I mean, let them. And if it turns out to be great and people love this socialist utopia, well, a lot of people are going to be moving there. But if not, people can move out, and it's much easier to move to a different states like Arizona and Nevada than have to leave the country entirely if the federal government gets screwed up. So let's take a look at this interesting article, though. This is from Newsweek, and this is what the Newsweek normies, this is what they would think about it. What a bad idea splitting up would be. In 2020, right-wing provocateur Candace Owens tweeted, "I wonder if we're past the point of reconciliation with the left. Maybe we'd all be happier letting them pick a few states they could turn into their own, with no guns, no police, no statues, no genders, no flags, no men, and no electricity." Well, first of all, some states are already doing that anyway. They don't need to become a country to achieve all these goals. California's it's not on its way. Tempting, Candace, yes, but it's a bad idea for a lot of reasons. One big one is that ignored. Economically, splitting up would be a $100 trillion mistake, which is funny that they would pick this $100 trillion mistake number, because coincidentally, we have over $100 trillion of unfunded liabilities. Not the national debt, but stuff that's already been promised to boomers as far as Medicare and entitlements. It's already $100 trillion. So the funny thing is, you could have $100 trillion worth of savings if you dissolve the dollar in the United States and Texas and whatever, they become their own countries. Well, the $100 trillion, poof, that will go away. But again, I mean, they would never do that. They would institute some other welfare. So if splitting up led to a civil war, it would cost millions of lives and trillions of dollars. But nobody's talking about like a shooting war. States could just, I would see that states, if like we have an economic crisis, some just states like Texas could just have basically their own taxes, not pay federal taxes, or just cut the taxes to fund the money they give to the federal government like by 4 times or something. They could just decree themselves that they're more autonomous. All these states, that's what they should do. There shouldn't be a shooting war. A lot of the states or regions, or maybe a group of states, just declare themselves more autonomous from the federal government. Was the federal government going to roll tanks into everywhere? I don't think so. If enough people, if a few states do it and more people actually want that, I don't see anything wrong with that. Because the beauty of what's happening here with remote work, people are already leaving high-tax states. Well, first, I mean, there is the demographic thing where millennials or baby boomers are turning older. They don't want to shovel any snow. So they're already going to the Rust Belt or like the Sun Belt. But a lot of people are already leaving LA, California, New York because of the high taxes. But that's just, I mean, that's a minor, I mean, the tax savings are kind of minor. Could you imagine if there was no federal taxes and all the taxes was statewide or local? Then you could see a real migration, because you would be able to see what type of taxes people really want to pay. Because if federal taxes are high everywhere in the country, well, what does it matter? Oh, you can save 10% or 5% by moving from California to Oregon or whatever. But is that is it worth the hassle? But if you get like either 60% tax or 5% tax, oh, people are gonna move. The low tax areas are gonna boom. If splitting led to a civil war, it will cost millions of lives, trillions of dollars, estimating that the fully loaded cost of war is tricky business. But safe to say modern wars are expensive, according to the Watson Institute, Brown University, 9/11, post 9/11 cost $8 trillion in military spending alone. But there's a funny counter argument here. Would U.S. be in Afghanistan and Iraq spending $8 trillion if United States was more, the states were more autonomous and had just local militias to defend itself? The United States went on this military adventurism because we're United States was like such a rich country. Otherwise, they'd just saved it. But the bigger and trickier part, what the wars do to the economy? It's estimated Yugoslavia's civil war in 1991 reduced GDP by 20%. Industrial production by 50%, along with 20% unemployment. Yeah, but nobody's talking about a shooting war. Either way, there'd be a huge ongoing cost due to economic inefficiency. We personally worked in 50 different countries around the world. Yeah, we could say without hesitation the U.S. is the greatest economic engine on the planet. Yes, we don't want to destroy that. There are many components that contribute to that standing, but it comes down to scale. Dividing up America would destroy these economies of scale. Everything would be more expensive and harder to get. Well, isn't that a great argument to get rid of all tariffs? We're so rich and so economically efficient because goods can move from state to state between Ohio and California without tariffs? Then why not get even richer by completely knocking down all tariffs in the United States and just being able to import goods tariff-free? That would increase. But of course, these people are not going to advocate for getting rid of all tariffs, or would they? Companies would need to duplicate manufacturing and distribution facilities. Supply chains already strained would be longer and more complex. Jobs would be fewer, and it would be more difficult to relocate to take advantage of opportunities. Risk would increase during the big ice storm 2021. Millions of Texan residents grappling with power outages learn firsthand the risk of associated with relying on a system not fully integrated into the national grid. People on both sides might believe taxes would be lower if the country were split up, say blue states not having to send money to moocher states or red states not contributing to welfare. It's more likely like tax burdens would increase. Many of the biggest ticket federal budget items like Social Security and Medicare aren't going away. Why, they could. That'd be the beauty. Yeah, I could see red states having their own Social Security and Medicare, but properly funded. Or you have like a personalized one where you get what you put in, but the way Social Security and Medicare are configured now, that's just a pyramid scheme. That's all just going to blow up in 20, 30 years. So it'd be nice to dodge that bullet. Also, scale applies to government just as it does to business. On a per citizen basis, more costly to run two governments than one. Defense spending. But yeah, we could. It's the whole thing. We don't need to completely break up like Europe. We can have a United States. We can have one federal government and one military and one everything like that. But just give the states more control of the taxes. Scale down the federal government. Cut it like by half or 4 times. Consider Senator Cruz's example. Texas. There are 254 counties in Texas. Of those, 232 went for former President Trump. Nonetheless, over 5 million Texans voted for President Biden, almost half of the enclave. 2/3 were voters living around the big metro areas. Yeah, but people would self-sort. If Texas becomes more Republican, more conservative, and California becomes more and more liberal, people can choose where they were. Maybe some states are in between, like purple. People can self-sort and choose what political climate they want to live in. Just because there's some lefty cities in Texas doesn't mean that. What does that mean? If people want Texas more conservative, Texas should be more conservative. In short, even if Americans are not compelled by our shared history and culture to stay together and work it out, we should be swayed by the realization that splitting up will be a burden of our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren with crippling debt and subscale economies. Well, the crippling debt is from that we're having today with the current system. We should just default and write it off and create more autonomous zones. It would be an expensive and unmanageable divorce. Yeah, I feel like this is funny thing. It's kind of projection. It's like what we have is unmanageable and getting worse.